good, everybody? It's your boy Todd Smith here. Yet once again for another episode of the No Gimmicks podcast alongside my tag team partner Dale Clifford out there in Fernley, Nevada. So with Survivor Series taking place next Sunday, we're going to give you our best and worst list that we've compiled of Survivor Series from over the years. Every single pay-per-view from 1987 all the way up until now we took a look at, and we also kind of broke it down into categories of best and worst surprise, best and worst team, best and worst moment, best and worst match, and best and worst pay-per-view of Survivor Series. So Dale, I'm going to start off with you, my man. What do you have as your worst surprise of all time from the Survivor Series?
All right, Todd, I think I got to go with from Survivor Series in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a little bit of idea where I'm going here. It involves
I do. I do already.
Involves an egg and a turkey-looking creature called the gobbledygooker.
Gobbledygooker. Oh, man. Possibly one of the worst moments in the history of the Survivor Series. Also one of the worst surprises, I would say. The funny thing about that is there had been so much build up as to what was actually inside the egg or who was inside the egg. And it's hilarious that you said that because we're on the same page on this one. But yeah, so my worst surprise is the gobbledygooker as well. It turned out that it was actually Hector Guerrero inside of that costume. Were you aware of that?
I was not. Wow, that's a distinguished role there for one of the Guerreros.
Sad. It's really sad because had he had just hopped out of the egg, nobody probably would have had much of an idea as to who he was. But it definitely sure as hell would have been better than the jive turkey known as the gobbledygooker. So what was your best surprise from the Survivor Series, Dale?
All right, it also comes from a Survivor Series 1990.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be the on-camera debut of The Undertaker as he was the mystery man for the $1 Million Team.
Without question. It's funny because me and you are on the same page for both of the surprises. Both best and worst.
Not too hard there was like when you kind of think of like surprise best and worst moments, really. I think pretty easy to see that we were going to be on the same page there. And
it cracks me up because even as young as I was when that took place, I was such a wrestling nerd even at that point in time, where when he came out, I remember I was watching with all my family and stuff like that because the Survivor Series used to actually happen on Thanksgiving. So we were all, together having a meal and enjoying the holiday and whatnot. And they ordered the show for like me and some of my cousins and whatnot. I was the one nerd who said, "Hey, that's me, Mark Ellis from WCW. What did they do to him?" I even recognized that back then. Yeah. And I saw him walk the ropes and everything. I just said, "Yep, I know that guy. I've seen him wrestle before." Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we were definitely on the same page with that one. Definitely the biggest surprise ever in the history of the Survivor Series. So let's move to the category of team. Who do you feel was the worst team in the history of the Survivor Series?
Clowns are us. Doink, dink, pink, and wink. They got a clean sweeped in their efforts against the royal family. So, and it's a bunch of clowns. Really, Doink's the only one that really matters, and he kind of was just a goofy clown anyway. So
yeah, it's funny because what's worse than having one wrestling clown? Having four. And I guess it was one actual regular sized clown, and then the other three clowns were little people. Correct? Is that how that worked?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I actually went a different direction with this one. So try this one on for size. When I throw out the term "the Alliance," what sticks out in your mind, Dale? If I say the Alliance and you think about professional wrestling.
Well, I think I kind of know where you're going with this one. It's the WCW tag team.
However, before that existed, there was another team called the Alliance, which competed at the Survivor Series from 1990. This team was composed of Nikolai Volkov, Tito Santana, and the Bushwhackers. So
those don't match at all.
Quite a pairing, right? And these guys went up against the Mercenaries, who were led by Sergeant Slaughter. Then you have Boris Zukov and the Orient Express. Now, if you take a look, out of those 8 guys, you maybe have about 3 who could actually work a match. Tito Santana, awesome worker. Underrated. Got settled with that horrible El Matador gimmick earlier on in his career. And then you have the Orient Express, who was comprised of Pat Tanaka and Kiyo Sato from over in Japan. Actually helped found All Japan over there. But yeah, that team, just if you look at it on the surface, it doesn't really make much sense. You have 2 New Zealanders, a Mexican and a Russian, and Nikolai Volkov, who had predominantly been a heel in his career. And then you have on the other side with the heels, you have Sergeant Slaughter, who had primarily been an American face, tagged up with a Russian, and then 2 Japanese guys. Yeah, I didn't quite get the premise of that one. So now, let's talk about best team, Dale. Who do you feel was the best team from the Survivor Series from over the years?
I'm looking at Survivor Series 1990. It is the Warriors, which comprised of Ultimate Warrior, LOD, Kerry Von Erich. But the reason why I kind of looked at it also, they were LOD at the time, but they're the Road Warriors along with the Ultimate Warrior. So I just figured, boom, it was a tailor-made name for a tailor-made team. And then you include a Von Erich. It's very tough to beat.
Guess who my best team was?
Same.
The Warriors. For all that same reasons, I thought it was so cool to see those 4 tagged up. You know, like I said, the sharing the same nickname, and also I was a huge mark for the Road Warriors. They were, my inspiration, big part of the reason why I wound up getting involved in the wrestling business in the first place. I was never too big on the Ultimate Warrior, although I thought Kerry Von Erich was pretty cool, and I actually got to see a lot of his stuff from when he was working over in Dallas in WCCW back in the day. So yeah, definitely without a shadow of a doubt, and it just also followed us into our favorite NBA team, of course, Dale, which is the Warriors.
There we go.
So moving on here, let's talk about the worst moment. The worst moment in the history of the Survivor Series. Dale, what do you have?
My worst moment is going to go to Survivor Series 1997.
Mm-hmm.
I was torn between this one being a good moment and being a bad moment. I decided to put it as a bad moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels and the Montreal Screwjob,
mm-hmm.
which was the inevitable ending of Bret Hart's time in the WWF at the time. So definitely that's kind of why I put it at worst. But lo and behold, I think we've kind of come to think that this might have been a whole big setup from the very beginning. So it could have been a wise old best of ploy.
I still to this day say that it is the most elaborate work in the history of the professional wrestling business, and I still have trouble believing that Bret Hart was in some way, shape, or form informed as to what was going to happen, and he had some part in it himself. To no surprise, although we're talking about the worst moment, I have that as my worst moment as well. It was just such a shock, at the time when it happened, and I hated to see Bret go out the way he did. However, if you really look at it from the standpoint of how it revolutionized the wrestling business, so many positive things actually came out of this.
Right.
You have Bret, who was heading to WCW. He was going to be, entering WCW as a huge face. Vince McMahon turns into Mr. McMahon, the evil owner, who winds up feuding with Steve Austin. That really kind of helped make Steve Austin's career. And then it also kind of, put more heat on Shawn Michaels and the members of DX. So really, it was kind of the ultimate of turning a negative into a positive.
That's why it was kind of a torn with it being an actual worst moment, when in actuality all of the positives, again, like you just highlighted, that came out of it kind of meant like it could have been a best moment, but just because of how it went down, it has to kind of go down as a bad overall moment for Survivor Series. But
yeah, it was just a shame the way it went down, for Bret, especially since he was in his home country of Canada. He wanted to actually drop the title to Shawn, but he just didn't want to do it that night. So Vince said, okay, all right, we have something for you. Anyhow, what was your best moment from Survivor Series, Dale?
It's going to be Survivor Series 1991, Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan, when we basically formed the new face of the WWF. Thanks in part to Ric Flair in a steel chair, the Undertaker became the WWF champion in 1 year's time, and we kind of donned a new age in WWF.
Yes, it was the precursor to the greatness known, the Undertaker and his long, storied career and his streak in the WWF and WWE. However, the one thing that spoiled that from being as big of a deal as it could have been is he only kept the title for 1 week. And then he dropped it to Hogan at the Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view. So, yeah, that's what kind of, spoiled that for me. My best moment, and I know this is something that only happened a couple years ago, I really dug it when the Shield debuted at Survivor Series 2012.
No, that's a good one. It's a good one. It was a big moment because just look at where we are in the current WWE stage. Is like all three of those men are main event parts of the roster. So,
boom. There it is, right there. 3 WWE World Heavyweight Champions coming from one stable. I don't think we've ever seen that with just one stable. I think Evolution, I think did it too, right? With Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista.
Evolution had 4. You got to remember
and that's right, Ric Flair. How can I forget about Ric Flair? So yeah, so this was the second time it was done, but it's just their debut was just so impactful the way they came out and they just red shopped that night when they showed up. And like nobody had really seen those three kind of paired up together because they were kind of doing their own thing down there in NXT. So yeah, it was kind of a big deal at the time. So moving on here, let's talk about the worst match from the Survivor Series. Dale, what do you have?
All right, well, worst match I think has to include my worst team, which was Clowns R Us. So I got to go to the same Survivor Series when it was Clowns R Us versus the Royal Family. And obviously it was the clean sweep for the Royal Family, which was Jerry Lawler, Sleazy, Queasy, and Cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
Defeating Doink, Dink, Pink, and Wink. Yeah, I just felt like, obviously, no offense intended to or the small wrestlers.
Of course not.
But yeah, it was Jerry Lawler and Doink, and then 6 short midget wrestlers.
Yes, that one was quite a sight to behold. It's tough to argue that one, but I have one, Dale, that might possibly, one-up you on that. So check this one out here. Let's take a trip back to Survivor Series of 1999. And how can we have a list without including the, the divas or the women's wrestlers, over the years? So try this one on for size, okay? We had Mae Young, the Fabulous Moolah, Tori, and Deborah taking on a very legit women's team comprised of Ivory, Luna Vachon, and Jackie. And then you have Terry Runnels. So what made this so bad is the fact that they actually put the team with Mae Young, Moolah, Tori, and Deborah, Steve Michaels' ex-wife, currently Steve Austin's wife, they put them over in that match. And it was a train wreck. Okay? It just goes to show how far women's wrestling has come along when we watch like Charlotte and Sasha Banks and who else do we have? Alexa Bliss and Becky Lynch and all them do their thing, because this was just horrible. This is around the time when they didn't let women do too much in the WWF or WWE, unfortunately, besides like pillow matches and have them come out, have naked in bikinis and stuff. I mean, this was just bad.
Now, I know that we knock on WWE for hanging on to the male superstars too long, but
yes,
Moolah and Mae Young might be pushing the bar on hanging on just a little bit too long.
You think? I think, seriously, this is no joke. I think when Mae Young was competing in the WWE, She literally was about 70 years old. Okay? She almost had to be helped, to and from the ring. Basically, I was just afraid. I said, this poor woman, I said, she's going to, get knocked down one time and she is not going to get back up. It's going to be just like one of those commercials. I've fallen. I can't get up. Those commercials that they show. I thought it was going to be something like that. But anyhow, let's talk about the other side of things here. So we talked about the worst match. Dale, what do you have for your best match from Survivor Series?
I think I got to go to what was a pretty crucial Survivor Series, 2001, Team WWF versus the Alliance.
Okay.
So you had Team WWF, which was The Rock, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, Kane, and Big Show versus the Alliance of Stone Cold, RVD, Kurt Angle, Booker T, Shane McMahon. Essentially, I picked this one. It's a Survivor Series match. Obviously, there are probably bigger singles matches that could have probably been best match, but I just kind of looked at this one as the importance of where it was. WCW had just folded, and WWE had just taken it over, and we had the invasion angle and all that stuff. So Survivor Series control of WWF was put on the line, and this was also the last WWF Survivor Series pay-per-view, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, loaded with star power. Yep. Loaded with star power, and basically the conclusion of a pretty big angle, and something that me and you, because we're pretty close enough in age, we hadn't really seen something like that happen in wrestling. Where basically one company almost kind of just dissolved the two other big wrestling companies at the time. And to see all the talent kind of transition over to WWE. So yeah, that was quite a big deal. And speaking of star power, my match that I chose as the best match. Although I haven't really been the hugest fan of this concept, I gotta say best match was Elimination Chamber from 2002 at the Survivor Series. And if you look at the fact of who won the match, Shawn Michaels, this was absolutely huge for him in his career because he defeated Triple H, Rob Van Dam, Booker T, Kane, and Chris Jericho. And at the time, all those guys, man, I mean, they were in their prime, basically. And Shawn Michaels had actually came off of being gone from wrestling for about maybe, I think it was about 4 or 5 years due to that back injury that he had suffered. He had that knockdown, drag-out street fight with Triple H at SummerSlam. This match was action-packed. And if you are going to check out an Elimination Chamber match, this is the one to see. So that was definitely my my top match from Survivor Series. So let's talk about the worst pay-per-view in Survivor Series. Dale, what would you have to say was the worst pay-per-view?
All right, well, I was debating between two of them, which kind of ruins where you had pegged your best match because you called it was an Elimination Chamber. Because that was one of the pay-per-views I had marked as two I was looking at for the worst, but ultimately I went to 1998.
Okay.
Because it was the first time the pay-per-view didn't feature a single traditional Survivor Series elimination match.
Ah, okay. Good call.
The second time was 2002, but that one had the Elimination Chamber, which was the very first one. So I kind of felt like 1998 needed to be the worst one because there was not a single traditional Survivor Series match.
Okay. Good choice. I'm 100% okay with that. However, I decided to go in a different direction, and I chose Survivor Series 1994. My reasoning for that is you did actually have a couple of the traditional matches. However, this is one of the first ones that I can recall where you actually had a singles match as the main event. And it was when Taker took on Yokozuna in a casket match. And I want to say that the special guest referee or the special guest enforcer was Chuck Norris, of all people.
Oh, there we go.
And if you had awakened after the snooze fest, which was Bob Backlund and Bret Hart. Yeah, that's right. Bret Hart got defeated by Bob Backlund, who had came from out of retirement, and was one of those throwing the towel submission matches. And this is kind of play on the fact that, you know, when Bob Backlund lost one of his matches earlier on in his career to the Iron Sheik, it was Arno Skolin, his manager, who turned on him and threw the towel in. Then, of course, we had the 5-star classic of the Royal Family with Jerry Lawler, Sleazy, Queasy, and Cheesy versus Clowns or Us. And then you had two other subpar actual 5-on-5 elimination matches. Yeah, so this one, it was just pretty underwhelming, pretty much every way that you slice it. So, with that being said, Dale, what was your best pay-per-view in the Survivor Series?
Well, I've touched on 3 moments from this Survivor Series. One of them was let off a very show as the worst surprise, but the other 2 came from my best section. So Survivor Series 1990, obviously the debut of The Undertaker.
Okay.
And we had the Warriors team. So obviously, if I'm going to have 2 of my 5 or 2 of the 4 leading into best pay-per-view moments be from 1990, I think Survivor Series 1990 has to be my best pay-per-view just because of my selections for the other categories.
Okay, fair enough. So it's kind of funny how we both went pretty far back in the vault for our favorites. So my favorite was actually Survivor Series 88. If you take a look at the star power that was on that show, and we're going to see something similar at Survivor Series here in about a week, but trust me, the tag teams that existed back then, and then you look at the ones today, there's no comparison to the level of talent and the level of depth that WWF had on their roster. So if you look at it, you had Ultimate Warrior, featured in the first match. He was the big star in that match. You had Hogan and Savage in the main event. You also had Ted DiBiase. You had Andre the Giant, Mr. Perfect, who were involved in the match. You also had Jake the Snake Roberts. But listen to this list of tag teams here. The Powers of Pain, the Rockers, the British Bulldogs, the Hart Foundation, the Young Stallions, Demolition, the Brainbusters, the Bolsheviks, the Fabulous Rougeaus, the Conquistadors, all in the same match. And that match actually lasted 42 minutes long. Unreal, the amount of star power that they had on that pay-per-view.
That is a lot of time dedicated to one match.
To one match. So, pretty much, yeah, that's our rundown of the best and worst of the Survivor Series from over the years, from 1987 all the way up until 2016. And definitely check out the Survivor Series pay-per-view, which will be from up there in Toronto, Canada, coming up next Sunday. Please visit our official YouTube channel. You can find us by searching the No Gimmicks Podcast YouTube on Google. If you would like to receive our notifications when we release our new episodes, please subscribe to us. We would also like to hear from our viewers, so please leave us some feedback in our comments section. Also, please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at the No Gimmicks PC. Be on the lookout for my updates on my personal LinkedIn account weekly, usually on Monday afternoons. And please remember that sharing is caring. Feel free to share the links to our episodes with other pro wrestling fans and on your social media accounts as well. That does it for this episode of the No Gimmicks Podcast. For my tag team partner Dale Clifford in Fernley, Nevada, this is Todd Smith in Bristol, Connecticut signing off. Until next time around, y'all take care.